Hello and welcome to our Rick Recommends, and we are looking at the top 10 gentle giant activities. Hopefully you've been on to our reading of the story and you've enjoyed it, and you've now come across to have a look at the sorts of activities that you're able to do as a result of reading the book. So on we go then. So at number 10, why don't you consider hot seating the characters? Take one of the characters from the story and then write some questions that you would like to ask them. It could be that you do this yourself, writing the questions and then answering them, or you work with somebody else to take on the role of one of the characters. Why don't you become one of the villagers? Ask them how they felt towards the giant, what it was like when the stranger came to town. Did their views on the giant change over the course of the story? Why not Miranda? How did you feel in the boat? What was it like when you reached the island? How did your thoughts towards the giant change as the story went on? Maybe the giant himself. How did he feel going into the village of Ballylock and everyone being so unkind to him? Did he feel like he wanted to help? How did his relationship with Miranda change how he felt about his things? Why did he feel so passionately about the wildlife? Maybe you could ask the visitor, what was he trying to do coming to town? Did he know the lake would turn green? The questions that you could ask are endless. Why don't you decide to take on the role of one of these characters and think about the answers they would give? Hopefully from doing this, it will really help you to understand the story further. At 9, why don't you undertake a bit of persuasion? You could take on the role of Miranda, trying to convince the villagers that the giant is friendly when you return from being over on his island. You could try and take on the role of the giant, try and persuade the villagers that he should be treated with fairness and respect. Why not take on the role of the visitor, trying to persuade people to buy your dust? You could do this orally, you could do it as a poster, or you could do it as a writing. Why don't you look further? Why don't you take the message of looking after the environment from the story and try and write something persuasive to persuade people to look after the environment? All of these different ways you could write, you could do as a debate orally, or maybe you could even draw some persuasive posters. At 8, why don't you try and retell the story? You could retell it orally, either in terms of retelling the story, what it was about, or retelling what the key messages are from the story. Maybe you could use the pictures and retell the story for a younger audience. Maybe you could retell the story using Lego or clay. Make yourself up a visual version of the story. At 7, why don't you think about decisions in the story? What would have happened had Miranda not been saved? How would people have felt towards the giant? What if the villagers had not accepted the giant at the end of the story? Would that have changed what would have happened next? Maybe you could think about and write what would be the next thing that would happen in the story. What would have happened had the giant not saved the village? Maybe he could have seen the storms, seen his green lake and decided, no, I don't want to help you. How would the story have changed then? Or what happened once the story ended? Did they live happily ever after and the villagers and the giant got on? Or did something else happen? Did the visitor return? Did people believe him that time? Your imagination can decide the next part of the story. At 6, maybe you could send a letter to the giant. If you had a chance to write to him over on his island, what would you ask him and why? At 5, maybe you could create a feelings tracker. You could either do it as a table here on the left, How was the character feeling at the start and why, in the middle of the story, and why were they feeling like that, and maybe at the end of the story. Maybe you could do it for some of the key characters, the giant, Miranda, the visitor in the story. Or maybe you could take one character and see how their feelings developed over the course of the story. So here on the right we have feelings going on the y-axis from unhappy to happy, and on the x-axis going across the bottom we have the time. How did the characters' feelings change as the story went on? Great piece of empathy work here. At 4, maybe you could do a picture description. Take one of the fantastic illustrations from the story and describe in as much detail as you can, using as many adjectives as possible, what is happening in the story. At 3, maybe you could create your own potion. If you were a visitor coming to town, what would your potion you were trying to sell to the villagers look like? What would it look like? What would it sound like if you put your ear to the potion? Would it crackle? Would it fizz? You can decide. What would it smell like? Would it be a lovely fragrant smell, or would it be a horrible smell that would make you want to move away from it? What would it feel like to touch? Would it be very liquid and runny? Would it be quite solid? Would it be hot to the touch? And then thinking about, what would you do with your potion? Would you drink it? Would you spread it? And what would the outcome be? In our story, you had to put it into the lake, and the outcome was that lots of fish jumped out. Unfortunately, it turned the lake green. What would your potion do, and why? Maybe if you're feeling really creative, you could create your own potion at home. If you're doing this though, make sure that you ask whoever's at home permission before you start putting things into a potion. And obviously, please make sure you don't drink your potion because you don't know what's safe. At 2, make a newspaper report. Imagine that you are the most intrepid reporter in Ballylock and you've been sent down to find out what's happening. Maybe you could do the report from the visitor coming to town and the lake and all the fish. Maybe you could do it from the disaster, from the storm. Or maybe you could do it as a celebration at the end to tell everything that had happened in the story. Using your best reporting skills, what fantastic writing can you do? And finally, at number 1, maybe you could make your own Gentle Giant board game. Maybe your board game could follow the story right from the beginning with the giant fixing the roofs right up to the end where the giant and Miranda danced around happily together. Maybe you could have lots of rewards along the way, but also lots of pitfalls that you wanted to avoid. And finally, why not come up with your own imaginative ideas? These were just my top 10 ideas. I'm sure you have got even more fantastic ideas to do around the story. Remember, you can go back as many times as you want to listen to it, maybe pause it on different parts or look at different illustrations within the book. I hope that you've enjoyed some of these really good top 10 Gentle Giant activities, and hopefully we'll see you soon when we share with you some more fantastic opportunities and activities you can get involved in. So from me, goodbye for now.